In this tutorial, I'm going to walk you through the process of adding and manipulating tests or assignments within the GradeQuick platform within a specific gradebook. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I already have one assignment entered into my gradebook for my students, but since then I've given my students another assignment, so I need to add that. All I'm going to do is make sure that my cursor is to the right hand side of the last column that I utilized, and I'm just going to left click, and it automatically says, well, wait a second, you've clicked to the right of the last column. Do you want to add a test column? Now be mindful that the term test in the world of GradeQuick is really just one of your assignments. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a test. It's really just an assignment. So that could be homework, it could be classwork, it could be a formative assessment, it could be a summative assessment, it could be any of those things that you're entering into your gradebook. So I'm going to say yes because I do want to add them in. Now up here, the very first row within your gradebook is the name, and this is the short name. So typically speaking, it's a very short, brief description of your assignment. I like to code my gradebook, so this is going to be my quarter one, and this is my second assignment in my gradebook, and I'm going to enter that, and then when I hit enter, now I have the ability to enter the long name. So this is really what was my test or my assessment called. So in my purposes, I'm just going to make up a generic assignment. So maybe it was types of government closure sentence response. Now, did you notice that I did have to stop there because there is a maximum character number or limit when you're entering in your long name. So that's a pretty long name, and I'm going to use that. So I'm going to say okay. My gradebook is automatically defaulted to quarter four. Those are global changes that would be set that you would not necessarily need to manipulate because you are entering into the quarter that is already established by our assessment office. The next category would signify what type of assignment is this, and again, you have personalization over your gradebook. So mine is just a closure activity, so that would be something that I would consider to be classwork. Now I've already entered something as classwork, so I used CW. So now So now when I left click within that column, I can use the drop down and enter CW. Now if it was something that I had assigned for homework, or maybe I wanted to say formative assessment, so FA, I could enter those in, and then the first time I enter them, they're automatically saved into that drop down menu. So I'm going to still continue with CW as classwork, and then it's automatically populating the date based on the current date. So in my case it's June 1st, but if I did need to change the date, all I would need to do is left click within that area, and my calendar should appear. There it is, and then I can choose the drop down and I could select the appropriate date. I would be very mindful of your dates because as you continue to progress through the year and you make updates to your gradebook and then post your grades, the grades signify the date in which it was assigned in most cases. So parents and students are going to be looking at those dates to clarify when the work was assigned, or maybe when the work was due. So you'll need to make sure that you set up those specific structures within your class. So I'm going to leave mine as June 1st because that's the day that I am assigning it. And my points possible, I'm just going to say maybe it was 10 points. So now it's all set up and ready for me to, as I'm grading my students' work, to be able to enter in their grades. So if I start to go down my column, all I'm doing is entering in their grades, and maybe the student 607 was absent, so they're not getting a grade, and then I can assign my grades. Now, if it were something like this where all of my students received full credit, it was an easy kind of scan through the room, check off points. Notice that I do have the option if I right click on the column, I can fill the current column, and what this will allow me to do is to quickly fill the column with a specific score. So if all of my students got a 10 out of 10, I could add in the 10 and then say OK, and I'm not going to do that right now. But if I did, it would just fill the entire column with that grade. Now, I do also have, in the same respect, the ability to zap the current column. And what that does is it will clear out all of the grades that I've entered and set them back to the asterisk, which means that they're not graded. Now, I've already entered some grades, so I'm not going to do that either. So I'm going to just finish entering in grades for my students. And now all of my students are graded except for my student that was absent. And I want to make sure that I signify in my gradebook that that student was absent, because maybe when I post the assignment on Edline, I expect that that student is going to complete the assignment as part of their makeup work, or maybe I just need to make that student aware that, hey, there was an assignment while you were absent. So one of the things that you have the ability to do within your gradebook is to set score footnotes. And what that does is it will place a little footnote to the bottom right hand corner of your grades to signify that there's something that you want to specifically say about that assignment or about the grade that was received for that assignment. So first, before you can use footnotes, you have to set the footnotes. So I'm going up to my grading tab, and I'm going to say set score footnotes. And one of the things that I want to have is that I want to signify, hey, the student was absent. So I'm going to select my code, and I'm going to select an A, and I'm going to change, and I'm going to say, what does this mean? And I'm going to say that the student was absent. And I'll select change. So now anytime that there's an A, what will show on the grade report for the student is that that student was absent. Notice that there are some default codes already there. Maybe I want to add in another one, maybe an I for incomplete. And I'm going to select change, and then I'm going to say OK. And now what I can do, now that my footnotes are set, when I select this particular score, I can right click and I can say add score footnote, and notice that all of my score footnotes are there, and I'm going to select the A for absent. Maybe I want to say, well, this student received a 7 out of 10 because their answers or their assignment was incomplete. And this just provides a little bit more detail about the reasoning behind the score that was given. Now, the next thing that I would like to show is just, again, that process of adding a test, and then maybe we added something incorrectly, and so now we need to delete a test. So I'm going to go through the process of just adding one more test, and then I am going to delete the test. And for me, this was a homework assignment, and maybe this was a 15 points. And then I say, well, now I'm going to change this, and I actually want to delete this assignment. So I selected the assignment, and I right-clicked, and then I'm going to say delete test. And one last thing that I want to make you aware of, remember in the previous section we talked about gradebook to gradebook copy. Now that we set our score footnotes here in this gradebook, don't forget that in the edit gradebook to gradebook copy, we can copy those score footnotes over into our other class. So I'm currently in my reading class, and I want to copy them over into math, and I want to copy my score footnotes. and I want to add an update, and I say okay. Do I want to? Yes, and now they should be also living in my other gradebook.